India and China reached an agreement on disengagement of troops from the north and south banks of the Pangang Lake in eastern Ladakh, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said in the Rajya Sabha on Thursday. Under the agreement, both sides will cease forward deployments in a phased, coordinated and verified manner in these areas. Well, the Defence Minister assured the House that India has not conceded anything while entering into the disengagement process, adding there are some outstanding issues with regard to deployment and patrolling at some other points along the LAC in eastern Ladakh. The Chinese side will keep its troops' presence in the North Bank area to east of Finger 8. Reciprocally, the Indian troops will be based at their permanent base near Finger 3. A similar action would be taken in the South Bank area by both the sides. These are mutual and reciprocal steps, and any structures that had been built by both sides since April 2020 in both North and South Bank area will be removed. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the India-China pullback. Joining me on the program today are Major General Ashwini Sivach, retired defence analyst, Manjeev Singh Puri, former ambassador, and Jayadev Ranade, President, Centre for China Analysis and Strategy. Thank you to all my panelists for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Ranade, let me begin the program with you first. Let's try and understand and analyze the possible factors that have resulted in the disengagement of troops.
I think we must proceed from the background that there is an absence of trust today that exists between us and the Chinese. I dare say that given the manner of Chinese propaganda in China, also they may be feeling that there is a trust deficit. But having said that, the fact is that this is a first tentative baby step towards defusing the situation and disengagement. So at Pangang So, which is a friction point where the troops were very close to each other, the effort has been to try and diffuse the situation at that particular point. So what we have seen is actually a suspension of patrolling between Finger 8 or Sirijap Fort, which is east of Finger 8, and the Dhansing Thapa post at Finger 3, which is where we are, temporarily. That would be resumed once the talks get underway again, after we have seen and confirmed the verification of the disengagement that has been decided upon. So it's a very limited step. But there are two important points that I would like to flag here before we go deeper into this discussion. The first is that in his statement in Parliament today, the Defence Minister made very clear that large portions of our territory, over 38,000 in the western sector, that is in Ladakh, and over 90,000 claimed by China in Arunachal Pradesh, are in illegal occupation of the Chinese. So he has made very clear that that subject remains open, and I presume that as and when we discuss the border, those will also come into play and they will come up for discussion. So he has reasserted India's position, claim and sovereign rights on these territories. The second is he has also talked about other friction points that will be addressed in due course. So that is why I say this is only the first step, and I think there will be more rounds. But the fact that such a disengagement has happened after 9 months, I think is a welcome sign, and it brings to light many more facets of this relationship and of China's position, which can be discussed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Since we are here then, Ambassador, let's talk about China's position, and from a diplomatic point of view, what are your thoughts on this pullback?
Frank, thank you very much. You know, whenever armies pull back, someone like me only feels gladdened, and I think this is a good augury. I am particularly also happy that all of this has come about as a result of India being quite resolute and strong in asserting our position. Now, let's look at how the world has possibly changed in the last few months. Perhaps the biggest change is what has happened across the Atlantic. And I think the Chinese have also realized that, you know, the geopolitics continues to remain one in which they will be looked at by the entire world for not following a rules-based international order. And it isn't a simple matter to do these transgressions and do this kind of expansionism and get away with it. But for me, of course, the positive was that we were resolute. We stood our grounds. The Chinese also realized. And I would like to just, end here and make a point that it is a combination of our resolute behavior being strong and strengthened there. Possibly the fact that, look, the Chinese have taken advantage of the situation over time, built up a certain amount of infrastructure, they'll continue to do it. Perhaps in various ways, they also found that it was perhaps useful to take a bit of a break. That may be so, as Mr. Jaidev Ranade will just mention to you. But then also the global geopolitics. And I think COVID and all these things put together made it such that the Chinese thought that since they couldn't for the first time perhaps ever allow their populations to truly enjoy the Chinese New Year, at least give the country a bit of a break. Thank you.
Short and sweet, Ambassador. Let me bring the General in now. So General, just to get a fair understanding, as to what usually happens at these military level talks and how is the disengagement really carried out on the ground?
Frank, see, as far as disengagement is concerned, it is taking place at two places now. That is, one is north of Pangang and the south of Pangang. Now, as far as north of Pangang is concerned, they are occupying up till finger 4. Now, the Chinese have to vacate finger 4, 5, 6, 7 and they have to fall back to finger 8. It means the infrastructure which they have made it has to be removed and then they have to physically move to finger 8 in a phased and a deliberate move, and that will be verified on ground. And accordingly, as far as India is concerned, we have to also move from finger 4 to between finger 2 and 3 at Dhansing Thapa post, which is ITBP post. And the area between Dhansing Thapa and finger 8, as on today, will not be patrolled. It will be decided after the diplomatic talks build up thereafter. So therefore, 2-3 things will happen, that physically they have to move back, disengage, de-escalate and de-induct the troops to the line which is mentioned, Chinese to finger 8 and we between finger 2 and finger 3. And remember that we have also occupied a green top just above the finger 4, a dominating height which was almost dominating finger 4, that possibly also we have to vacate. Now, as far as the south of Pangang is concerned, my concerns are quite a bit. We have not mentioned what does it mean de-induction in south of Pangang. Our point is that on night 29th, 30th August, India has occupied Kailash range, which consists of Rajingla, Richingla, your Spangur Gap and Gurung and Magar Hill. This is dominating complete Chushul, Moldo, Baul. And this also to some extent dominate your Spangur Gap from where the Chinese came in 1962. Now the situation is that you can go in China through Spangur Gap, but the Chinese can't come. Now this is a tremendous advantage which we have achieved on night 29th, 30th, and these heights which we have occupied in Kailash range are falling in own area. Does it mean that we will be also vacating this Kailash range? Now, if that is the case, that is a cause of concern as far as I am concerned, because this was a game changer, a force multiplier, which has changed the equation completely. The initiative till then was with Chinese. After 29th, 30th August, the initiative to some extent passed on to India because we surprised the Chinese and we have occupied an area which is strategically very important in the whole corridor, and we occupy and also dominate Chashul Moldo. Now the details are not being given. Does it mean vacating of Kailash range in south of Pangang? So no, that is very important. The second issue is, when we are talking about disengagement, we were talking every time it will be comprehensive disengagement starting from Daulat Beg Oldie and Dapsang, and thereafter your Galwan area, and then come to Pangangso. But it looks like that we are restricting as on today north of Pangangso and south of Pangangso. What happened in Dapsang? Now, Dapsang is very crucial for India, and so is it crucial for Chinese. Chinese have come inside Dapsang, almost about 5 to 6 kilometers, not letting Indian patrol to go from patrol point 10 to 13. And what is happening is, of course, they have come because they thought that we have made a Darbuk Shok Daulatbeg Old Road, and Daulatbeg Oldie has been made with a brigade plus strength, with the tanks, RT guns. They were always thinking that the Indians may do something either in Saichen or threaten highway G219 going from Xinjiang to Lhasa, or to the west, that was China-Pakistan economic corridor in Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, to divert or to put pressure on India, and also to give a depth to Saichen as well as their highway G219, they have come 5 to 6 kilometers inside and coming to the line which they were declaring in 1959. Now, if that is the case, if we don't talk about Dapsang, then possibly not a correct. Maybe in the second phase, the talk will go. 2-3 things issue stands out again.
Right.
One is, as far as Dapsang is concerned, if the Chinese stay where they are, they can directly threaten Nubra Valley and Saichen Glacier. And this is the place where the collusion between Chinese and Pakistan can literally take place. In the east will be China, on the west will be the Pakistan from Gilgit-Baltistan. And remember, 2 divisions of the PLA already in Gilgit-Baltistan with Skardu airfield taken. So my concern is, till the Chinese do not move out from Dapsang, it will not be considered as a comprehensive disengagement which was prevalent in prior to April 2020. And the second issue is
points taken. General, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. We'll take up the other issues as well. Let me bring in the others. Okay, Dapsang needs to be looked at. We need to ensure that, there's proper disengagement there as well. But like Mr. Ranade already pointed out, these are baby steps. Probably we'll see that happening in phase 2 and later on as well. But we may not see that happening at all too, because, Mr. Ranade, history has shown us that we can't trust Beijing to keep up its side of the bargain. So should we approach this disengagement with a lot of caution?
I think, Frank, not only caution, but we probably introduce a bit of trepidation also when dealing with the Chinese. There is, as I started off by saying, there is no trust in what they do or what they say, and they have proved it time and again. But here, let me mention 2 things. In his statement, Rajnath Singh did talk about other friction points being discussed. So I think General Sohaich's concern about Dapsang and all, they will come up for discussion later. I think another important point that we need to flag here is that the discussions have been led at the ground level by our corps commander and their corps commander. So the army officers, army personnel are seeing the situation on the ground and then clearing what can and cannot be discussed. So I think they must have taken into account the advantages or disadvantageous positions that were held and where we should be. So I do feel that we should not jump the gun, as it were, and see how things pan out, because if the army has stood firm for 9 months, they're not about to back off without ensuring their solid positions wherever they were. The third point I would like to make here quickly is, expanding a bit on what Manjeev said. Of course, like a good diplomat, he has welcomed the diffusion of tensions, which is a point I also made like a good Indian citizen. But here, let me just say that it is the fact that we stood firm without blinking that contributed in large measure to this disengagement coming about. And if I may just invite your attention to the 73 days face-off at Doklam, where again, we insisted on talking to them. They, of course, were pouring vitriol, but finally there was a disengagement. Here we have seen the same thing, but in 4 times fold the length of time. There is 9 months here. But still, the outcome is welcome if it holds and if it extends to the rest of the area. And the hint given in the defense minister's statement about dismantling of structures at North Pangang and South Pangang that were built after April 2020, to my mind, suggests that it is still in the Indian government's table of objectives that the Chinese will go back to April 2020 positions.
All right. So let me go back to a point that